So if one window and door quote is thousands of dollars cheaper than the others, there's usually something wrong there. And there's a good reason for that. And the reason is usually not a good one. So lower prices, they might feel good at first. They might feel like a win, but in this industry, lower prices usually come from hidden decisions. And a lot of these decisions homeowners don't see, and they don't find out about until something goes wrong. So let's talk about where those prices actually come from. Not really to scare anybody, but just to explain what quotes leave out. So the first place that prices typically gets lowered is the design pressure selection. This can be the thickness of the frame, the thickness of the glass. A lot of these things matter. And I've talked about it before to where, I'm comparing buying windows to buying a minivan for your new family. You're typically, where a lot of people look at is a minivan or family car, family vehicle with a high safety rating. Are you looking for the cheapest minivan or SUV that gets you from point A to point B? Or are you looking potentially for the most economical yet still safe option to get you from point A to point B? Now, at the end of the day, if it is an impact window, they do have their minimum standards. However, are you okay with the standards just meeting that minimum? That's a question I pose to you. So specifically for your home, some companies will typically choose the lowest rating that passes code, and that keeps the price down, but it also leaves very little margin for error. And that's where we really get into the way things are installed. So during a real storm, that is where the margin matters the most. And the second place that prices get lowered is in frame construction. So when you have less materials, you're usually going to have lower costs. And on paper, they're still impact windows, as I mentioned, but under pressure, they don't behave the same as they're supposed to. And the third place where the prices typically get lowered is the glass package, as I mentioned previously. No low E coating, no insulation. That might save you money up front, but it's going to increase the amount of heat that comes into your home, the amount of noise that gets through your windows, and the long-term discomfort. The worst thing that I always tell people is, buying these impact windows and doors, you should really think about what you're getting, because you're kind of stuck with these for a long time unless you have the means and desire to reinvest into windows versus taking the time to really understand what you're purchasing and making that decision from there. That's going to be a long-term purchase for most people. And the fourth place where people usually end up getting lower prices is the anchoring. So, it's kind of hard to get away with using fewer anchors. However, there are ways to cheat the system, and it's a shame that that's even a possibility, but inspectors don't have time to check every single window all the time. Now, I do want to say most inspectors do a very good job at this. However, we've seen some inspectors come, give us a thumbs up and leave. Whereas, we have had some inspectors that'll literally inspect every single opening and make sure all the anchors are there. Thumbs up to those guys. Another thing that I've talked about in the industry that we're starting to see is actually using cheaper fasteners. And there's even a thing as knockoff fasteners. And these are screws, we call them fasteners in the window industry, that are actually not approved by the Florida Building Code. So even coming down to the screws that are installed here in South Florida, we have a code, and there are screws that actually have to pass those minimum standards, which I think is very interesting. So what this does, it saves the company time and money, and almost no homeowner will ever notice until the wind load tests the installation. That's during a storm. And the fifth place prices typically get lowered is sealant and water management. So cheaper sealants will typically fail sooner, and incomplete sealing lets water come inside. It might look fine on install day, but it'll typically fail during wind-driven rain or during a heavy storm. And the sixth place that prices typically get lowered is labor. So fast crews, day laborers, they just cost less. There's no way around it. Rotating subcontractors cost less, but experienced installers who slow down, they're going to cost more. They take their time, they care about craftsmanship, they care about their reputation. Those are the people that we like to surround ourselves with. And that difference shows up in the final price. So the seventh place where we typically see people saving money is something as simple as giving you the right height for your doors. Now, that might sound weird, but impact doors are going to have a higher threshold. Your standard thresholds that are in like older homes or in homes that have older doors are typically going to be anywhere from like a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 of an inch. But your new impact thresholds are going to be a lot taller. You're talking about anywhere from like 1 3/4 to 2.5, depending on the door itself. Now, what a lot of companies and a lot of homeowners don't consider, and this is like something that happens after the fact, and where once again, once you order it, once it's installed, you're kind of stuck with it. But a lot of homeowners don't know to ask these questions, and a lot of companies don't care to even present them. Is that, let's just say your door is 80 inches, but now your threshold is 2 inches higher. Now, if we install that door, you're going to have to step over that threshold, or it presents a tripping hazard especially for older individuals or young kids. So what we always do is we order an 82-inch door and ask the homeowners, which most of the times the answer is yes, we make sure that we install that flush. But we have to chip out concrete, we have to level concrete. That also costs money. That is a standard here at Bigfoot Windows and Roofing. And the eighth place where prices typically get lowered is when it comes to accountability. So there's no documentation, there's no photos, there's no installation records, and that ends up saving money until somebody needs proof later. It seems like it would just be given, in this time and age. There's cell phones with cameras everywhere, obviously, but you'll actually have installers. We've been called to be an expert witness in some cases where there were no pictures from the project, which sounds insane, but what's the first thought that comes to mind? They're trying to hide something. That makes it more stressful. If there is a code issue and that contractor disappears, you have no proof that anything was installed properly. So best case scenario, you have to remove all the screw covers. And then it really goes from best case scenario to worst case scenario from there, because some inspectors will want to see that the bucks were installed and that the bucks were caught in. How do you do that? Pull everything out. You're going to need a professional company to then pull a permit if that contractor or if the original contractor disappeared. Once again, costing you time and money. And the ninth place where prices typically get lowered is avoiding uncomfortable conversations. So instead of stopping when something is wrong, a contractor opens up a window, removes a window, and they see something wrong with the structure, some companies will just cover it up. Once again, been called many times as an expert witness. I see these things as a contractor. I would see these things. At the end of the day, I gotta say, it sickens me that, some people don't have the integrity to have these conversations, because I don't think they really understand how important these windows will be in the middle of a hurricane. So what ends up happening, they rush the installation, they get paid, and they're gone. And that also helps keep the prices down until failure shows up. But at that point, does it even matter to them? I don't know. So when you understand this and you understand all the things that happen in this industry, those price differences start to make sense. Now, don't get me wrong. I was a young, hungry contractor and I wanted every single job that would come my way, and I was probably priced appropriately. Did I do a good job then? I think so. Are there a lot of companies out there that, are trying to work their way up and get more business? I think so. So impact window and door projects typically range anywhere from $15,000 to $45,000, obviously depending on a lot of factors: size of the project, number of doors. Doors and sliders are usually the most expensive parts of the project. Insulated glass, low E glass. There's obviously a lot of factors. But at the end of the day, lower prices doesn't always mean bad. High prices doesn't always mean good. Big gaps always deserve an explanation, and price alone isn't the risk.